Hey, everybody. I'm Justin,
And I'm Eric.
and we're Sonic Bloom. So, maybe you guys have figured it out by now, but we do this once a week, every day or not every day, every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's our little talk show where we go over game news and a topic of our choice, usually pertaining to game development or game audio in particular. Cool. Well, let's get on with the news.
All right.
First one. Do you want to cover this? Or do you want me to jump on top of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I'll jump on it. It's that Ratchet and Clank got a gameplay reveal trailer. And it we'd had some gameplay before from the PS5 kind of big announcement video or series of videos. And it's been a little while.
It's
This one
almost been
showed
a
off.
full year at this point.
That is crazy. You're right.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yep. And it really doesn't feel like that now. Even though COVID year it felt like forever. At least in the game world, game space, the space of next gen consoles, it feels like this was just yesterday. At
Yeah.
any rate, um, uh, the trailer is out, and it kind of highlights the more of the release gameplay that we will experience. What stood out to you in that?
I mean, for one, it's just incredibly crisp looking. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I mean it's I think especially coming from the last gen, I think we're used to a lot of visual tricks used to hide low resolution rendering or high resolution rendering with like muddy textures, that sort of thing. But this thing's running, I think the video is running at 60 frames a second, and then you also have just like the texture clarity and the graphical clarity, and all of it is I mean, it almost looks like a full like CGI rendered
It really
cartoon.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That stood out to me as well. I got to say, I'm on a technical side of things. It feels like this generation, and it might be related to some of the new APIs that the new graphics cards and consoles are capable of. But it feels like we're really starting to get tessellation done right, and geometry shaders and that kind of technology, which allows you to take kind of a high level polygon, or actually a low level or a low detail model, and like fill in details and round it out as it gets closer to the camera. So you're not wasting a lot of time on something that takes up a 10 by 10 pixel screen space when it's far away. We've had LOD for a while, but there's always been that snap in. And that maybe it's still happening. It's just A, harder to see, and B, there's just so much going on screen at once, and it's like hard to identify where those boundaries are. There used to be like three, and you could see things pop, and then you get a little closer and they'd pop again, and I'm not seeing that now.
No, yeah, I mean like it is. Yeah, I mean it's just like you're the things you're used to seeing is just gone. LOD being one of them. Like using motion blur to cover up some jank.
Yep. Yep.
Using depth of field to cover up some jank. Not to, and then just the temporal rate at which everything's running and the resolution. It's like they've just nailed it. I'm really impressed with it visually at least.
Yeah, I agree. And to the extent you said that, it looks like pre-rendered, and there were parts where I was watching the trailer and I was like, this, I honestly can't tell if this is cutscene or if this is gameplay. And just the way the camera work was, and we're getting really good with dynamic cameras and everything. Um, Before the recording here, we were chatting about this, and I saw there was a part in particular with that giant, I don't know, robot that comes out, and looks like it's gonna stomp on this line that is going through the scene, and in the trailer, and it looks like one of the characters is sliding along it, and it's going to stomp on it and break it. That scene reminded me a lot of God of War, and just the scale of things that they handle in those games, and the kind of the direction, the visual direction, and the scene itself. I was like, I wonder if there are team members from Sony Santa Monica that helped out with this.
I wouldn't be surprised if again there's resource sharing across their different studios as they tend to do.
Yeah.
Um, I think we talked about it before, but like Sony tends to lend out its top talent to get games on their platform, and I don't, like I wouldn't be surprised this is happening again. Even like across like not just across the studios, but like there's also like resource sharing. I think Santa Monica, at least historically, had been the home of their motion capture studio, and so people who want to do mocap for the games would come to Santa Monica with the Santa Monica team operating the thing and capturing for them and using their talents on how to do like good motion capture for the game. So it wouldn't be surprising if you had designers coming in, especially given the amount that Insomniac has done over the past year. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprising that they had some of the big guns come in to help wrap up the project.
Yeah, I can't imagine what their team structure is like right now.
Yeah, I don't actually know.
And they did Miles Morales at the same time,
Right.
right?
They're working on Spider-Man next, whatever it is, because
Yep.
a lot of the tech that went into Miles Morales is stuff that's testing out some of the technology that they're using in the next iteration of the Spider-Man game.
Hmm.
They just released a patch for Miles Morales that uh did muscle simulation on some of the suits. So they have a full muscle simulation rig for the next Spider-Man game. So like there's just stuff that they're just dropping. They did the Ratchet and Clank game on the PS4. They just released the patch for that pushes that up to 4K 60.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like the MVP of the PS5 launch.
Oh yeah, for sure. Particularly on Sony first party.
Yeah, for certain. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. I'm actually excited to see like what this means for the next games that they have. We also
Yes.
can acknowledge now that they can run parallel teams and actually achieve what they need to. So they were developing Spider-Man. Part of that Spider-Man team broke off and did Miles Morales,
Hmm.
and they had Ratchet and Clank running in parallel probably for the last like 2 years developing that game. So yeah, I mean, that means that the team's parallelized and they are likely going to be producing two titles at a time and probably dropping in one every 2 years.
Yep. And in further PlayStation news, it's been a light week in the news realm this week, but Sony earlier today dropped a couple trailers, and one of them was for Returnal, and we got a preview trailer of that, and there have also been some reviews that have come out now.
The embargo on the preview was lifted.
Yep,
Embargo on
or review.
reviews.
Yeah,
No, not reviews. Previews only.
really? I thought that I saw a review and it had like grades.
Yeah. They did a pros and cons, but I think they're still embargoed to talk about certain aspects of it until.
That's fair. So there could be
Um,
high level, like here's what we liked, here's what we didn't like. We can't tell you anything about it other than this.
yeah, I think they're keeping the story under wraps, probably for good reason. I think the biggest surprise actually about this is that it has a robust story in it, given that it's a roguelike.
Right, which it's challenging to do robust with that.
Yeah, but they're clearly doing something, and they have there's a video released a couple days ago, or actually longer than that, but there was one that focused like on the story aspect of it. Like it's still a complete mystery. Like I have no idea what's going on, but there are times where I think you probably respawn, and I think this is actually mentioned in people who are talking about the preview was that they sort of change the cadence on you. So like it's a roguelike, so you go out, die, come back, start from where you started. Um, but periodically, instead of just going straight back into like action, they're like, by the way, totally weird place now. And your home or a home of some sort is sitting on this planet, and you can go and explore it and learn more about your backstory and what's going on. So they've managed to figure out how to do some, I guess, rewarding story in the middle of their frenetic gameplay.
Yeah, there I don't know why that is, but it does there's something about that that feels a little bit like PT to me, the PS4 demo.
Uh, I would even go so far to say that that's intentional, because if you recall, there was a state of play that Sony did where people are like, "Oh, they're going to announce a new game." It was the Game Awards,
Yeah.
um, and people like PT's got to, Silent Hill has got to be here. That whatever, and then it opens up with like that hallway that looks just like PT,
Yeah.
and then it's
Yep.
Returnal.
Returnal. Right.
So
Yeah.
there's something about it that I think
Yeah.
either they took influence from, or uh, yeah, you know, that, or they're intentionally like trying to mislead people, being going like the popularity and the rumors surrounding next Silent Hill. We're just gonna play on that. I don't
Right.
know what it is though.
Right. Yeah. It looks pretty good for those who aren't aware. It is being compared to like Doom Eternal. Uh, so in terms of its gameplay, it's like a Doom Eternal plus or meets roguelike. So there's grappling and kind of modern Doom mechanics that seem to be brought into the play style.
Yeah, as you called it, Doom Returnal.
Doom Returnal, right?
But yeah, yeah, no, it's got like a much faster pace of gameplay than I expected, but it should not come as a surprise because Housemarque in general, their games tend to be a lot faster paced because they did, would do like bullet hell type games, and this is like a 3D reimagining of it. So based
Yeah,
on the way enemies move, the speed that you can move, your dodges and everything else, it's beginning to look a lot more like Doom Eternal in its the pace of its gameplay and sort of the movement.
yeah,
Um,
frenetic.
Frenetic is, yeah, the best way to state it.
Yeah,
I'd also say it looks way more like a horror game than I think I originally assumed.
yeah. I kind of walked away from that initial trailer thinking this looks like someone said, you know, it was a cool concept was that movie with I think I'm gonna say it was Tom Cruise and I am blanking on her name, but these two people would keep reliving the same day, but it was all sci-fi and it was them trying to survive and figure out what was going on. And I was like, oh, cool, this is going to be like a very cerebral survival horror, maybe because they showed some dark stuff.
You're talking about Top Gun,
Yes, yes, Top Gun. That
or
was
was
the
it
movie.
Mission Impossible?
I think it might have been Mission Gun.
Mission Gun,
Yeah, it was the one that bridged the two of those.
Top Possible.
Pretty good actually. But those types of experiences were what we kind of I thought I was gonna be in for. But the trailer is definitely more like guns and survive, hordes of enemies type of thing. It looks
Yeah,
like
and the enemy is like there's a lot more like I'm like I'm not religious by any means, but like demonic looking.
demonic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Like you
yep,
see, like, and then so we start going like I get why they compared it to Doom Eternal on the gameplay action, but now like they're showing like giant statues of like horned beasts and the
yeah,
like, and you're like, hmm, giving it the horror sense, and it is beginning like I'm kind of curious if the plot of the game might be something more like a PT or like a Silent Hill, where it's less about you actually exploring some like alien world and more about you exploring the depths of your mind and your psychosis.
right. That would fit, and that also, given that it's narrative driven and that it's hard to do, how do you die and come back, right? I mean, uh Hades did it, but they in a story manner, but they did it well, and they did it by invoking you're a god or the son of a god. So sure, the rules are different. But when you're supposedly a fragile human, how do you get that to come back? And that narrative framework, seems like it would be a really great way to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Either way, it looks amazing, and
Yeah,
a lot of people who've been giving it previews say like this could be game of the year, at least for PS5. And
man.
people are going, yeah, this is the first next gen game. It really feels like it, and I'm kind of glad to see people saying that because I think we still haven't seen games that have not been cross gen yet. Or if they were like exclusive to the console, like what's it called? Um,
Astro's Playroom.
Astro's Playroom. No, I was thinking of the Medium on the Xbox,
Yes, yes, yes.
which is developed from an indie team, so it's not like a
Yep.
AAA studio, Team Bloober, but uh, like they're doing stuff that you probably wouldn't be able to do on the last gen console, but it's also not graphically pushed in the same way that Returnal looks to be pushing things. So
Yeah, it's a lot harder for a AAA team to match the quality that just a visual fidelity, I should say, not quality, fidelity that you get when you have the backing of a first party behemoth, and you can tap into hundreds of creative labor at the drop of a hat, and say like, hey, there are massive teams of artists and animators and content creation houses in countries littered all over the world. We're going to tap three of them to make assets for this, and just make sure have like a team whose job is dedicated to ensuring graphical fidelity is maintained across all the assets. Indies don't really get that benefit.
so yeah, people are saying that this is the first like truly next gen game that feels like it. Two other things worth mentioning on that is the a lot of people are talking about the way that they use the DualSense and the
Yeah,
audio design and the way the Tempest engine I think is working for this is people are saying it's like transformative. Like the everything Sony was promising about how these things would revolutionize, maybe not revolutionize, but add a lot more depth to the games.
yeah,
People are saying, yeah, with Returnal, it's amazing to have headphones on, and the way the controller's used is really like people are like, I don't know how I play without it. So I
yeah,
like Housemarque is a they really know how to design games, usually arcade style, but like they get those tight loops working really really well.
yeah,
So we can expect the very least for that, and so it makes sense that they're doing like a roguelike, given their sort of pedigree.
yep,
um Hopefully just as everybody's saying, that this game really shines.
yeah.
So
I haven't yet played it. I've seen the new gameplay trailer, and I'm excited to see how that feels.
yeah. Let's move on to our next topic. This is
Yep.
actually what we covered last week, but we had some technical issues, so it's inaudible largely in the last one. So we're going to cover it again so that we can actually talk about our opinions. It's kind of an interesting one, anyways, and given the slow news cycle, it's ripe to cover again. But
Yep.
Xbox Cloud Gaming, their cloud platform that allows you to stream games, finally made the move over to iOS and browser. I think it's largely due to the browser support that iOS came along with it, but basically they can't do 4K gaming in browser. I think it's 1080p locked, but or maybe less than that. But either way, they're if you have a modern browser on a device and probably some minimum requirements that I don't know, you're able to play any of the games that are on Xbox Cloud Gaming in a browser or an iOS device, which is pretty
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, and apparently we found out last week. I think that even includes fighting games like Killer Instinct, which is interesting because they're more Twitch based, and definitely are, frames are important in that game, and I'm curious to see how well that actually plays.
Yeah, I mean, we know that cloud streaming is not the most performant. There is a significant amount of lag. I think like as we talked about last week, it's this. I think cloud gaming is largely good for people who are casual gamers.
Yeah,
And the console buying the Xbox One X, or really what's most likely the case is buying some high powered PC, is where the tourney fighters, the people who are
Street Fighter fans.
yeah, making money off of this, are going to be the ones
Yeah,
buying the consoles that give you the minimum latency. Playing online is probably going to be more for the casual gamers.
yeah, they're probably going to be playing on PC regardless. The big ones would,
Yeah.
as long as the game is supported there. Like, I'm pretty sure Street Fighter Five is on the six. I don't know what we're on now. Um, yeah, but it's interesting to see. I think one of the requirements for Xbox Cloud Gaming is that the browser supports controllers, and iOS devices just gained with iOS 14.5, which came out just earlier this week. They gained full support for the DualSense and the Xbox series of controllers. So the browser's there now, and it can theoretically support all the tech. So it's now that's how they're going to approach platform compatibility with iOS and not have to pay Apple's App Store tax.
Yeah, the weird thing about that too is like the timing on that is very weird, suspicious almost. Because it's like
Yeah.
it almost feels like Apple's fronting being like, well, if we make the exception for you, then we have to make the exception for others. But we understand your standpoint, so we'll do you a solid and get Safari updated so that it will handle both the PlayStation and Xbox controller, so that you can get on with your cloud gaming platform, and you're not going to be breaking the rules that would open us up to other challenges.
Kind of cool. I'd be interested to see what their integration is like. They might allow you to do that, like app to, if you had a game page where the link was dedicated for that game. Like I went to the Killer Instinct page, then I could turn that into an app. Now I just have Killer Instinct. If I want to launch Killer Instinct, I click that button. If I want to launch another game, I click another one. That'd be kind of cool. There's a lot of neat opportunity there, and I think the interesting thing is to see where Microsoft goes with this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, clearly this is their broader strategy for the generation.
Yeah.
Um, like Microsoft has a very smart team of business people that
Yes.
probably looked at the writing on the wall, especially after the Xbox One generation, said, "Look, if you don't do something different, this is gonna be like a lost cause. You'll have your dedicated supporters, but you're gonna be in the margins compared to the PlayStation, and PlayStation has far better to do support." And I think the right call was to go, let's not challenge Sony directly on the same, to the same rules, and let's like pursue something different. And I think it's probably going to be the thing that saves Xbox as a brand, and likely is going to allow Xbox to exist well beyond this generation.
Yep.
Just I think the hardware is going to take a seat back, because if you can get Xbox Cloud Gaming on an iOS device without owning an Xbox at all, like
Mhm.
you have to start questioning like what is the actual point.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and part of this is when you look at this from a business standpoint. I don't care if you're an Xbox fanboy or fangirl, or you think that Nintendo. What about Nintendo? Like it doesn't matter here. If we think about this from the standpoint of the Microsoft executives who pay the bills, they're probably not gamers. They might be, but they don't have to be. And that's kind of the point. They're looking at the bottom line, saying we have our own investors and our shareholders who are looking at us to produce big numbers. And the Xbox One generation, that's 7.5 years, however long it was, did not appear to be like a growth market for them or a growth product. It seemed to be relatively stagnant compared with the competition, and that is not a good sign. If you're looking to cut your losses and make more money and apply your strength, your technological development strength in other profitable sectors, there's conversations there. It looks like they're not ready to give up. They're lessons learned. Let's move on and do something new. And I think the Xbox Series consoles are largely the result of that kind of looking inside. But the greater what we're seeing with the Xbox Cloud Gaming is the greater the life beyond the series consoles, right? That's the big the big plan.
I think they're kind of well aware that this loophole exists, in which it's going to cut into their ability to sell Xbox Series X consoles. Because for me, I'm looking at it and going, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are very similar consoles.
Yeah, yeah, very little separating them.
Yeah, I mean, there's small performance differences between the two, but it's like ultimately,
The
if
Series X specifically,
yeah,
and the
yeah, let's not talk about
PS5.
S right now per se, but
Yeah,
the point is that like console gaming has always been about getting the best for the money.
yeah,
You're able to buy a box that costs $300 to $500 and get some cutting edge gaming for that time that it's released. And if you wanted cutting edge gaming for 8 years in a row, you would get PC gaming.
and you would continually upgrade.
Right. And for some people, that's the most sense, where that makes the most sense for them. Like if you're a competitive gamer and you're making money playing games,
Yes,
you can dump money into your gaming rig to keep it, cutting edge at all
competitive.
times. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of gamers out there, consoles are a cost effective way of doing it, and I think you know um, if you want to game on the cheap and you want access to both the Sony library and you want access to the Xbox game library, I think this is calculus that Microsoft has already done, and looking at it and going like, yeah, let me guess how many Sony gamers are going to be willing to buy Game Pass to have access to the games that they can't normally get a hold of. Even if it's for 3 months, it's gonna give them whatever it is, $60 in their pocket that they wouldn't have gotten from a Sony game in the first place. And I think that's an important business advantage that Microsoft has correctly postured for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and, there's the argument that Sony has this technology as well with PlayStation Now, which is, I believe, built on Gaikai from years ago. Uh, but it's not as mature. Microsoft has really been pushing this technology, and Sony seems less interested in making it broadly available across all manner of devices. Right? I think you have to play it on a PlayStation right now.
No, you can do browser based.
You
So,
can. Okay.
but it doesn't offer the same sort of thing Xbox Cloud Gaming does, which is game like their AAA games day and date. Um,
Right. Right. Yep.
yeah, it offers generally
Back
back
catalog.
catalog and
Yeah.
streamed only.
Right. Right. Which, for the difference there is um what is it called? Xbox Game Pass. That's the word I was looking for. Allows you to download. If you're on Windows, you can download the game locally to your Windows machine and play it as long as you're logged in. If you're on your Xbox and the game is compatible there, this is what we were talking about, that smart delivery stuff for games that support it. I believe it'll download that to your console and you can play it there. With the cloud saves, you can probably transfer between devices, whatever one's most comfortable. If you're on your iOS device now, you can play that streaming, right? Like it's all interconnected, and it's just play wherever you are is Microsoft's approach. We don't care about the hardware, well, we care about the hardware insofar as that we need to make sure as much as possible that you're having a good experience, but we can now kind of guarantee that with the cloud. So, just have fun.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's the right approach. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we said it before. I just said it actually, which is like they weren't going to be able to compete against Sony's AAA. And if you looked at their business strategy separately, like Sony is focused on their AAA IP. They're
Yeah.
expanding into movies. They want to bring it out to more people, and this helps them sell games. It helps them sell consoles, and they are able to move large volumes of games. Whereas Microsoft, the best like let's say Xbox One, like the best Gears game that they released, probably paid for the cost of the game, but didn't like make them billions of dollars in revenues, where Sony can't actually claim that with things like God of War. And I think Microsoft said, like, we don't have the strongest IPs, we didn't handle them well, and instead of doing that, we're going to focus our money, instead of like developing hot new IPs, we're going to be focusing on buying outright companies
Yeah.
that have the IPs that we want, and securing them for our game streaming platform.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. If you look at the last generation, Sony spent a whole bunch of time kind of reimagining, to an extent, what their games could be, and their IP, right? God of War was a very different experience from the previous God of War. They're like, what if we did God of War but added story, like actual meaningful story to it? And they took a very much more mature route with a lot of their first party titles. Whereas Microsoft was like, let's do another Halo, let's do another Gears. Do we have anything else back there? No. Okay, we'll do another one of each of those. Like, they seem to be just kind of trying to go with what was new, and they did spend some money buying a bunch of indie studios. They had that one, was it E3, where they announced like they'd purchased 7 indie studios, and then like, I don't remember anything that specifically came from that in the Xbox One generation.
Yeah, I mean, I actually even go as far to say that between the Xbox up to Xbox One, they're purchasing, besides purchasing like publishing rights to games, their purchasing of
Yeah.
studios was largely a failure for the amount of money that they spent to get the type of
To
games
get
that they
them.
get. Like
Yep.
they only ended up with a handful of like really rock solid games. And I mean, even people like Bungie like said, yeah, we're done with this. We're breaking from it. And it's like you started seeing those
Yeah.
relationships fall apart. You start seeing the quality of their games go down, and Xbox team probably had to take some hard lessons there and learn from it. We've yet to see what that actually looks like and how that's changed, because I think all the games that are going to be like fruit of that change in concept are still a couple years out. So let's cover the topic that for the week. And this one I kind of wanted to. This is a little bit left field, but looking at the game industry over the past year, there's been a huge amount of change, like seismic changes. I mean, this is for the worldwide. Like everybody's had to adapt to essentially times during the pandemic, and there's been like gains and losses for the games industry. We can look at anything from how we're handling press conferences and trade shows. We can look at how people are working to develop games remotely, and you can look at stuff as far as like how sales have kind of been rebalanced, like the enormous surge of sales that Switch had gotten, usually like in its waning years, gave it like Wii type boost sales in its what, fourth year, fifth year.
Yeah, something like that. And a very odd, a very strange year to suddenly have a massive uptick in sales.
Yeah. And not only that, like I think what's kind of interesting is it took a game like Animal Crossing, which does sell well enough, and suddenly made it one of their top sellers. Totally probably changed perspective on Nintendo's side, at least, about what games are going to be their big sellers. Like no longer is it Mario Kart and Mario. Suddenly, Animal Crossing is outperforming any other IP outside of Mario Kart. It's kind of like how the Wii functioned. Like when the Wii was released, it promised something new and game changing, which whether or not that's true, it's kind of irrelevant, because the point was is that they released a console that was significantly more affordable than uh, uh, the PlayStation and the Xbox at the time, 360
Right.
and the PS3, uh, and was released at a time where I think we're just beginning to come out of a recession. And, you have this generation of people who probably gave up on games for a period of time and said, actually, I remember Nintendo and I want to jump back into it. And I feel like the same thing happened here, not because of a recession, but because of, suddenly people finding a lot more time on their hands, and not really having a whole lot of ways to fill that time besides like
You're,
sitting
you're,
and
you're,
watching TV.
you're you're talking about the Wii?
Going from the Wii and the way the Wii performed and getting like a huge boost that like was almost unexpected. Like the success of the Wii was not predicted by
Yeah,
Nintendo,
it
and
was
that's
predicted by Nintendo. They
no,
did. They had a talk. They had a talk at GDC before they announced what it was, and they did a whole thing about their strategy being red blue. They were like, we took a different path with this one. We see Sony and Microsoft playing, the red ocean. They're this is all chopped water. There's tons of people. There's a blue ocean out there where there's tons of gamers. The casual gamer, which had just started to become a thing. That was their bet. They weren't necessarily expecting it to be as big of a thing as it was, but that was their hope, was we were going for that space, and they
yeah.
nailed
I
it.
mean, there's the aspect of that they knew that they couldn't directly compete in the graphics war, and they took a
Right.
they
Right.
took a left field approach and going like there has to be more gamers that are willing to pay for a more affordable console, and they were right. They weren't. I
Yep.
don't think they predicted the sort of monumental boom and then the immediate deflation of it, and like what that gamer population
Yeah.
actually meant. Um,
Right.
and how it kind of defined what the Wii was for that generation. Likewise,
Wii
the
Sports and Wii Sports too.
yeah, and the Wii balance board game, the Wii
Yep.
Fit. Um,
Yep.
but no, I would go to say like they they were not prepared for the Switch to get some giant boost in sales.
Clearly not. Yeah. The fact that it was sold out all the time.
Yeah, it's like it just sort of became a commodity item very
Yeah.
quickly, and Animal
Yeah.
Crossing I think crossed like 17 million units or something like that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um, the point of this little side rant was uh, the pandemic sort of rebalanced things and sort of shifted perspectives on the game industry as a whole. What I kind of wanted to talk about here is like, what are the positive changes that happened to the industry that are worth keeping? What are the things that we were kind of glad to see go?
Mhm.
And like, what do we hope the game industry learns from this and takes into the future?
That's a tough one. I think one of my this is a like a lot of this is going to be my own perceptions of what's been going on. I think my read of the industry, I'm going to use the industry here as the overall gaming industry, including players. There's players and then there's the game developers, and I want to include them all with this next statement that I make, which is that I think that we have seen the recognition of women as gamers in a big way in the last year or two, and particularly in the last year. At least I've seen them come up and be taken more seriously by the developers, the marketing teams, as this is a group of people that it's not all just 13-year-old boys that play games. And now that we understand this, let's make content that is for them, where they are represented within it. Let's let's involve them in the development of it. Hopefully, I'd like to see more of that in general, but I think there's a trend that is moving in that direction, and for me that is a very positive thing I'd like to see continue.
And I think they did an analysis, and they're like, female gamers now represent more than male gamers.
Yeah, that was I understand the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that that's a trend that I like to see moving forward. I think as well, Twitch has done a great service in that respect. I mean, there are certainly still some, that that are uh that maybe are, and I say this across the gender spectrum. There are people out there that are trying to make a name for themselves, and games is one of the vehicles they're using to do that. uh but I don't care, they're playing games, and they're people are seeing themselves in those roles, and it's enabling others at the very least to do it, which is great.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's well said. Something that I've sort of noticed is the shift, like the final push to make uh, game companies sort of embrace like a uh, the online media way of consuming their announcements and everything else.
Yes, yes.
And not
Good
only
point.
that, but also like going back to the days of the demo, like even though we have the online infrastructure to support like putting out demos whenever the hell we want, um, the gaming publishers as a whole really stopped doing that. But now you're seeing with like Resident Evil 8, like they've released what, three demos now,
Yeah.
or they're about to release a third demo. No, I think there's three demos available now. To be like, yeah, here's a taste of it. Here's a taste of what we have coming to you. I'd love to see like a far larger embracement of going like, look, the trade shows are great. Trade shows are a great place for people to do hands on. But at the same time, like we have the infrastructure to do it differently, and we just didn't embrace it because we were like, oh, we'll just put all our money towards showing up at a PAX or showing up at E3. And now it's like, no, we can publish a demo that is 30 minutes long, that shows you exactly the part that we want to show you. Yeah, it's more to work on the developer, but for AAA studios, it's like you're already investing a ton of time to get these things out the door. And additionally, embracing like the sort of one piece press releases. We're going to focus on this one game that we just developed to show off what it is and to try to drive as many sales as possible towards it. So you know
Yeah.
it's nice to see a lot of the especially AAA publishers really embracing that and doing more to support access to people at home or wherever they are at.
Yeah. It's been nice to have that capability again, where these are basically the demos that you would have seen in a roadshow to PAX. you would have seen some of them you would never have been able to play because they would have been pitched at the press, the gaming press, and only the press would have been able to play them. And if you were lucky, you might have gotten a disc or something. I don't know. But that those are now available to players is awesome. It just gets the voice going.
Yeah, yeah. And I think especially when it comes to AAA games, like the cost of development at this point is not leaving a whole lot of room for the companies to like have a failure. Like there's not really an
No,
option for Ubisoft to launch an Assassin's Creed and like a Watch Dogs and have both of them underperform because
right?
it's the cost of their entire studio network um to operate is what those games are. So I think they're beginning to say like, look, like this is actually what's happened in Hollywood too. It's like you don't release big AAA or big movies, big studio movies alongside of a Marvel movie. It's just bad marketing. It's bad planning, and a lot of it's like strategic. You're like,
Yeah,
okay, like Marvel's going to be releasing, whatever Avengers 5 in June 1st. We're keeping away from it for 3 weeks before we launch Godzilla versus Mothra. Like that sort of thing. You're just like that they compete in the same space. I think the game industry like has to take example from this as well and start looking at it and saying, Resident Evil, like Capcom's success over the next year largely hinges on Resident Evil 8 doing well because we've invested so much money in it performing, and we have to vie for that time. That's going to be a month of someone's gaming. It can't be competing against a Halo. It can't be competing against a Ratchet and Clank. And so there's like some strategic timing going, releasing these things so they're not releasing in direct competition. But yeah, I think embracing this new way of doing things is largely going to be important for those AAA games to really bid for the time of people. Because honestly, like a game that takes me a month to play is probably going to get all of my attention. I'm not going to focus on anything else.
that's been my modus operandi.
Yeah,
I know there are people out there that like to switch between games a lot, but I struggle with that.
yeah. Again, like I think you have to have it as a career for it to really be
Yeah,
balanced. Otherwise,
yeah, that's your job.
yep.
Um,
Go ahead.
yeah, was there anything else that affect other than like just people buying tons of games?
Yeah, I mean, services and games all saw a huge boost in the arm. It also
Yeah,
helps that like it aligned with launch of two major consoles at the same time and the release of two
yeah,
major graphics cards. I think the real interesting thing is like Nintendo. Like Nintendo saw a huge boost at a time when it definitely should not have seen a huge boost.
right.
And if we look at the Wii as we were talking, that was a short-lived boost. And I think it's going to be incumbent on Nintendo to do what it can to capture that new audience. And the unfortunate thing is I'm seeing right now is like I'm not sure exactly what they're doing to capture that audience. Because if you look at Nintendo's release schedule over the next year, it seems more like the end of a life, like or at least perhaps maybe the end of like the Switch lifespan, which Nintendo may have been preparing for. And so there's not a release of many large titles this year, possibly in preparation for a Wii next, or not a Wii next, excuse me, a Switch next HD,
Yeah,
whatever, that may not be entirely compatible with the games, or maybe that's what their intention was. But either way, you've got a bunch of like a bunch of new Switch owners. There's a huge backlog of games, but looking at this year, it's really going like, what exactly are we looking at for new releases beyond this year?
yeah. I'm just looking at some upcoming Nintendo games just on Google, and I'm seeing mostly that Pokemon. There's like some new
Pokemon Snap's
Pokemon
coming
games.
out. There's an announced new Pokemon, but I think it's still a ways off because of what they showed
The
is look really early development.
Yeah, it's Pokemon Breath of the Wild, Pokemon Legends Arceus or whatever it is. Uh, and then there's Splatoon 3, which is coming next year. So they've announced Mario's Golf Super Rush again. That's kind of like one of their side things, the Mario Golf series. Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. I mean, for Zelda fans, again, not going to keep a ton of people around. A lot of these are third party stuff. Uh, yeah, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I guess those are coming later this year. Um, and then there's a lot of indie titles that I'm seeing here. And yeah, the Pokemon Legends, Splatoon 3, the Project Triangle Strategy one looks really good to me, but that's I think that's a Square Enix game. Yeah, Square Enix. Yeah, they really haven't announced anything big of their own. Metroid Prime 4, which is not
Only
mentioned.
talked about in whispers at this point. But we do know Austin's Retro Studios is working on it. They've been hiring for it, but Nintendo's been like super tight-lipped about it, and they think I last talked about Metroid 4 was like 2 years ago. They've
Something like
shown
that. Yeah.
nothing on it, so it's another one of those weird
Say,
Nintendo things where it's like
nah, we'll not show it yet.
that I think it like it's just mismatches with the platform. It's like you on the Switch you have a handful of like Nintendo fans, but the Nintendo fans that are like would 100% buy a new Metroid game are not the larger population that are
Right.
likely to buy it. And like the Metroid series, I think in aggregate has only sold as well as like Nintendo, like as well as like Mario Odyssey or something like that. It's like in aggregate, I think they have like 12 million sales total for Metroid, and it's like they single games will do better than that. So
I'm not sure of the numbers. I
it's
will.
not. I did a count like a couple of months ago to talk about a point I think with you, and it was just like, oh yeah, the Metroid series is really not
A huge
it's not
moneymaker.
not in terms of the way Nintendo sees moneymakers. Like where like
Right.
Mario
Right.
Kart will sell like 22 million copies, you're like that just rakes in money for them.
Yep. I think
So,
I think the other one that we can't neglect to mention is the next Breath of the Wild game, Breath of the Wild 2.
but again, it's another game that
Yep.
they announced 2 years ago. I mean, this is the year, like Zelda's anniversary year. I think 30th anniversary or 30 whatever.
Yeah, it would
Um,
make sense to do it. Maybe
but
they'll announce it with their Switch 2 or Switch Pro or whatever they
I
call
mean, I
it.
think that's what a lot of people kind of are might have been speculating that Nintendo was up to, and they
Yeah.
might have had to significantly change their plans when they suddenly got a huge boost in sales from
Oh.
Switch game. Yeah, like suddenly we have this like 20 million casual gamers that just jumped on, and we have to serve them something. And
Yeah.
if they squander it, they may run into another Wii type situation where you see this huge boost for reasons, and then fail to serve that demographic, and then just like plummets, and then you have like you might plateau out at a better rate
We're
than
at
you were
Switch.
at. But yeah,
Yeah, we're at Switch U stage.
yeah, they promise they're not going to make the same mistake. I really hope they don't, because it's a dumb mistake to make twice.
Yep.
But yeah, I hope Nintendo learns from it and takes their newfound earnings and invests it into kind of what Nintendo's always been good at, which is like playing with new concepts and not hedging to that. Like they're gonna be like, well, we're gonna make a ton of money with this weird idea, but you never know. Something like Splatoon could become something that's popular enough to make three versions of it, uh, or like going back to like the days of Pikmin, where Pikmin was like a cool
Yep.
experiment, and Luigi's Mansion was a cool experiment that got legs.
Yep. And they weren't enough to make like tentpole games for Nintendo, but good enough that they got some sequels to explore more of the concept. Fans got to enjoy more of it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, anything else you want to talk about, or do you want to call it?
I think that's good. Thinking about where we are now, it'll be my hope is that the gaming industry, the people that are raking in the biggest bucks, their small developers are doing okay, but like and that might fund another game or two, but the bigger developers are have been doing very well, and some of the indies who lucked out in their positioning, I believe, um, Stardew Valley has been selling very well. Titles like those are doing very well, and I'm hoping that that can be reinvested to create more games once the pandemic is done, and that the population that got used to playing games during the pandemic continues to do so afterwards. It's not just like a bubble that whenever we're all allowed to go outside, everyone just throws their game consoles in a box in the corner and that's it.
I mean, it's got to be a bubble, but it's just a matter of like how much will it contract, because
Right.
the game companies fail to cater
Iterate.
to the new users and give
Right.
them content that's worth picking up. So
Yep.
we'll see. Um, Anyways, I think we're good for today.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining in. I know this is pre-recorded, but we appreciate you tuning in and checking us out. If you like what we do, please subscribe. Check us out on YouTube and any of the other social channels. Um, as for next week, we will not have a video to publish, or we will not go live. One of us will be traveling. Uh, but we'll be right back the week after with new content. So
Yeah.
thanks for
Yeah.
hanging in there.
Yep. Thank you very much, and have a great couple weeks.
Take care.